All right. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast, Beast Over Burden. I'm Nikki Sims. With me is Andrew Jackson.
Long time no see.
It's been a long time. Full week. It's too long. So we've got a fun one. I like this episode because you and I were in it, among many other reasons. But this one we did just in 2024, tips for training while traveling, which you and I do a lot of traveling.
Man, did we do a lot of that in 2024.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about going through my calendar to count the number of trips that you and I have taken and how many different gyms I've trained in 2024. It's a bunch.
And I would say I was traveling pretty much every week for 2024 as a commuter. So lots of hard lessons learned on the road that we've packed into this one super duper episode.
Yeah, there's a lot in here.
All things training while traveling.
Which I love that we have travel in our lives. So if you're someone who doesn't want to sacrifice that and still wants to train, you can totally do it. So take a listen. We have a lot of things that you can do to plan ahead, what to do when you're in the moment, and how you can still make it successful.
Definitely.
You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. Welcome to Beast Over Burden. I'm your host, Nikki Sims. I'm a coach and chief experience officer at Barbell Logic. With me is Andrew Jackson.
Good morning.
Good morning. Andrew is also a coach, and he is the chief operations officer at Barbell Logic and the product manager for Turnkey Coach. Nice to be with you today. Excited about being back.
Spring, finally. Actually, I don't know if it's technically spring yet, but it sure feels different when the clock jumps ahead.
Yeah, definitely digging daylight savings time. That's been wonderful. But yeah, we just got back from about a week-long trip, which I highly recommend everybody do. Taking a vacation is really nice. Get super caught up in working and training and just like into the grind, as they say. And man, it's refreshing just to step out of it for a moment. It only will make you appreciate things more, in my opinion. So welcome back to the office.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I mean, the thing about it is that I think I worked a little bit every day, or at least at a minimum, my brain definitely thought about work a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
But to be in a different context and to have space from the day-to-day allows for different types of thinking. And that's just feels sort of like mental floss to be able to...
It does.
Mental flossing to be able to have that breathing room.
Yeah. Creates the space to kind of be reminded what's important, maybe what was just momentum and inertia, what's true to you versus true to others. That's how it felt for me, which felt really nice. Yeah. But we also were able to work out the whole time. And that was like a huge value add for our vacation specifically. We worked out every day. We had this amazing gym we were in Cabo San Lucas, and we had this gym that had a squat rack with potentially the lightest barbell in the world, but it had a squat rack with plates that were in kilos. And the best part is that it overlooked the Pacific Ocean, and there were whales all the time. Like you could pop your head up between sets, and very likely you would see like a whale poof or a whale jumping out of the water. And that was so magical just to have, instead of looking at a screen or staring around the gym at other people between sets, you just got the sun and ocean and nature. And it was just one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I think the topic of conversation that we wanted to hit on was that often vacation becomes a reason people can't train, or at least they feel like they can't train. And I think it'd be interesting to talk about benefits of maybe the why first, training, or at least whether or not you're doing exactly what you normally do. I still like to think about, I think I've called it train every day kind of mindset. Not because you are setting PRs every single day, but that if you kind of think about every day as you're training, you bring a little bit of a different intention to your day. And that doesn't mean everything has to be perfect. It's just that you're making training decisions, whether you like it or not, assuming training is part of your life. I think both of us have prioritized training, and we've also experienced the frustration. I think maybe you have some words on this, of programming for clients when they go on vacation, and then the program, nothing really happens.
I do, yeah. I get requests for hotel workouts, which they require just thinking outside the box, try to make them fun. And I appreciate that people want to train, but very low compliance.
Yeah.
For hotel workouts. And I get it because you're on vacation. That's not why you're going somewhere. You kind of have to squeeze it in. You're managing your calendar with other people. Sometimes your schedule is really not in your control, and you have to go to this probably crappy hotel gym in the basement next to a weird pool. The color of the water is green, and you're like, I don't really want to be down here.
Dumbbells only go up to 40 pounds. And
right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's worth it. But yeah, I think it's worth us talking about how it really can be worth it.
So yeah, maybe the whys and the hows of training while travel.
You know, we've had situations where our schedules will be tight, but we will work it into our schedule for work. And then even when we're doing a personal vacation, what's your first why?
This has really shifted for me in the last 4 years, especially post-COVID. I think we've talked about this before several times, but pre-COVID, I would say that if I couldn't get access to a pretty legit Black Iron gym, I just wouldn't train. In my mind, it was very binary that I needed to be doing one of the big four, relatively heavy. And then if I was on a program that was, had some sort of linear progression, that if I wasn't going to continue that progression, I would pretty much write the week off or however much time I was traveling.
Right.
And consider it a lost week and come back and sort of do a little reset and maybe a mini linear progression back.
Just very purist, barbells or nothing.
Yeah, I would say the reason is that I didn't have a good why for training if it wasn't like that. My whys were very clear around adding weight to the bar and doing the big four. But if I couldn't do that, I didn't have a reason why. And I think what changed over the course of COVID, and definitely some of the research that's come out in that time, or at least it's become more clear that the amount of weight and volume needed to maintain your muscle mass and your strength is significantly lower than what's required to add muscle mass or build strength.
Right. Yeah. When you've trained for a while, it takes a long time to lose what you've worked on. And that also means you could still train without it being the same, like high intensity. Is that what you're saying?
Well, training advancement, I just want to clarify. Yes, I do think it takes a while to lose muscle mass. However, I think the rate of loss increases as you age.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've noticed this with older clients, but if they take a week or two off, it's a pretty big setback. Do they still have muscle mass? Absolutely. It's more that the amount of intensity and volume to sustain your muscle mass, like just to hold on to what you have, is less than what it takes to add. I don't know if I just am saying what you meant, but what I thought I heard you saying is that you lose it slower, but I'm not saying that. I think you actually lose it relatively quickly as you advance. Imagine if you did nothing for a week, or, if you ever break your arm and it gets put in a cast, how quickly your muscles atrophy. That I'm saying is pretty quick. But what we saw over the pandemic was people that just, even if they were lifting dog food bags or body weight stuff, came back much faster than those that did nothing. And that's showing more and more in the literature that to maintain muscle mass and strength, you can work out at half the volume, 50% of the intensity, and your body will at least have enough of a signal to say, okay, I need to hold on to this. I'm not going to start going pure catabolic on the muscle. It's the use it or lose it, maybe, is the simplified version of that, which we've all heard for years.
Yeah.
But it's just became much more clear, much more concrete of a why in my brain, that even if I can't get access to, the nice Black Iron gym, I can get, in the grand scheme of training, an extremely important workout. I would maybe even argue more important of a workout during that time than if I'm perfectly hitting every single workout in my, ideal conditions. Does that make sense?
Why is that?
Because I think those setbacks have a more impact on long-term gains than any individual workout.
Yeah.
So if I were to take a full week off, that might cost me the equivalent of, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to get back to where I was, maybe even longer.
I think you would slip right into andropause, honestly. During that week.
Yeah. If not worse. I might go full into menopause. So now for me, when I go on away from the ideal conditions for a week, my why is super strong. I'm like, I want to do something.
Yes.
I mean, and this is just kind of my mindset in general that's shifted as I've trained longer. I will always want to do something over nothing.
Yeah.
Like that's what's become binary for me. It's flipped. Instead of the all or nothing barbell training, it's all or nothing, something over nothing.
And it feels good. Like, it feels so good to go on a long walk, to do some intervals on a bike, to lift some dumbbells, like to do some squats. Like, we've talked about this before. The first couple minutes in the gym, the first few reps, they don't feel good.
Yes.
But then it's 100% likelihood for me, at least, that it will feel good. And I really like feeling good.
Yes.
I don't know. I guess that's not for everybody, but I will choose that.
Well, we talked about this. This trip was also, in front of it was a 4-day work trip.
Yeah.
It was 11 total days on the road. And the first did we do 1 or 2 training sessions where we had to go find, it was a LA Fitness or something like that.
Yeah. I think I did 1 or 2, 1 hotel workout, maybe 2, and then we went to an LA Fitness. Yeah.
Yeah. So as soon as I got done with that session, we had this conversation where it was like, I don't know how many people have been able to get to a point where they've trained long enough that it doesn't actually feel good for a while in the workout. Like, so I started warming up my squat and it felt terrible. Like, I would go so far as to call it painful. My hips hurt, my knees hurt, my back hurt.
And this is 45 pounds, 135 pounds.
45 pounds, 135 pounds might have been actually the worst. I didn't have my belt. I didn't have my knee sleeves. I did have my lifting shoes. I actually prioritized bringing that, but it felt bad.
Yeah.
And then a weird thing happened. 225 felt better. And then 315 felt great. And like, to your point, by the time I got done with that squat workout, I felt like a totally different person.
Yeah. Big time. It's like, it's just, your body is like flushed.
Yeah.
Of like all the stuff that comes from travel where you're dehydrated, you're eating differently. The air is weird, like on planes, and we were in Florida, so it's gross air. It's sticky and wet all the time. And like your eating is different. You're bloated from salt that you don't normally eat. Like your body just doesn't feel like yours anymore. And so, yeah, something about training legs and getting to that point of some stickiness in the effort.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's one of the best feelings. But yeah, you did have to do a buy-in of some.
Yeah, I had to be committed to go through that. Like, I had to have faith.
Yeah.
That doing the warm-up up to the, relatively close to my normal weight. It was probably 85% of what I would normally do for the volume day. It might have actually been my full-on programmed weight, but probably a little bit less. It was actually only about 30 pounds less.
Okay.
So yeah, that was actually 90% of what I was planning to do, 315. For my volume day, and felt amazing, but had to have faith that was going to happen. I was going to throw in an interesting side note. I saw a paper studying tendinopathy, essentially. One of the conclusions or hypotheses they were testing is that some of the pain symptoms associated with tendon pain is from fluid being trapped in the tissue. And that one of the reasons exercise, or we talk about all the time, motion is lotion, quoting Darren Deaton, helps is that stressing the tissue, especially under loaded movement, helps push the fluid out of the joint. So if you notice, like if you've ever had tendinopathy, if you sit still, like if you can't bend your knee for a long period of time on a flight, or if you're sitting while traveling, movie theater, it's some of the most excruciating pain you've ever experienced. Man, when I had knee pain and couldn't bend it, so brutal.
Yeah. Well, remember I had that back thing one of the last few days of our trip.
Yeah.
Where the bed was pretty rough on my back. I couldn't move for like 2 hours. Like I could barely put my shoes on. I like took a step wrong and that hurt like a mother. And like I really just couldn't move until I made myself move.
And then you move. And then you would deadlift 225 basically.
Yeah.
200 pounds.
I went from like struggling to sit down to put my shoes on to a couple hours later deadlifting 225 when it felt good.
Yeah.
Like what?
I think that's one of the biggest mental flips that happens after you've been training for a while, is being able to recognize discomfort versus pain, and being able to have faith, and having experienced enough times to have the faith that that first movement going, warm up, get the bar moving, start putting a little bit of weight on, and work through that discomfort to the point where you actually feel better by orders of magnitude than you would have if you didn't do anything.
Totally.
Which is tough when you're on vacation, because you're like, I don't feel good. It's probably going to feel better to go sit down by the pool and have a margarita.
Should probably have a mimosa. It's 8:30 in the morning. Should probably do it.
Especially when like the breakfast waiter is asking you, like almost like pushing it onto you.
Yeah. We resisted.
But yeah, so like that's, I think, a huge piece of the why for me is it actually makes the vacation feel better to me, or the travel.
Yeah, every day felt wonderful afterwards. And it's that nice time. I was mentioning earlier how when you're traveling, sometimes your schedule, for the first half of the trip, where it was a work trip, things were tighter. The second part was a vacation. That's a little different. But on trips, you sometimes are just at the whim of lots of other people and your work schedule. And it's nice to have, even if it's just 25 minutes, 30 minutes, where you get to have your own time and space to be in your own place and work on what you want to do, what makes you feel good. And I think it's a good recalibration for the rest of the day, where you go from, potentially being reactive and responsible for everything to just being in your really pleasant workout state of mind.
To piggyback on that idea, for all of those listeners out there who are frequent work travelers, one of the strategies that I've worked with a lot of clients on is to set that time aside first thing in the morning, because it's probably the time that you have to protect on your schedule, although it can be painful. You might have to set the alarm clock a little bit early, but commit to that 20, 25 minutes of, even if you don't consider it training, but getting kind of hot and sweaty, move some weight, move your body, not only because that's going to feel better and you're probably going to be in a better state of mind having that alone time and just kind of getting your body going. But I've also found that gives people a why for making better decisions the night before. Because if you've ever been on those work trips before, you know that you often end up at the bar at the end of the day after the meetings, and you're having, a cocktail, and maybe you can have one and still get to bed at a reasonable time and have a good night. But what will often happen if you don't have a reason to get up early the next morning, or if you don't have that self-accountability to get up early, like even earlier, one turns into 2, 3, 4, 5. And now you've got a terrible night of sleep and you feel even worse the next morning. There's a bit of a ripple effect. That's a bit of that kind of like training every day. It doesn't mean you have to be perfectly training, but still making decisions every day that are kind of supporting your training goals.
Yeah. Logistics around that are seeing if your hotel has a gym, go to their website, look at the pictures of their gym, see what they have available.
You've become really skilled at this.
I've become very good at stalking gyms. I know a lot of people are, but what I'll do is I'll look at the hotel and look at the fitness center, or then I'll just Google the hotel and gym, see what images come up. And that's how I'll initially pick a hotel. Or I'll just go to Google Maps, pin in the address of our hotel and then search nearby for gyms. And then I look at all the photos and see what the options are. So it takes a little bit of detective work, but it's really not that bad. If I can do it, you can do it. It's worth it to do that ahead of time instead of doing it while you're there. If you do it while you're there, it's another friction point that is sometimes enough to just be like, screw this. I don't need to do it.
Yeah. There used to be a time where I had more sympathy for people traveling to be like, okay, yeah, all right, I get it. Let's just take a break from training. In 2024, with, iPhones, Android, whatever your device of choice is, Google Maps and Uber.
No mercy, folks.
I can't think, no mas. I can't think of a time that we haven't been able to find a gym within, not to mention the explosion of CrossFit.
Yeah.
Now that barbell training has become as popular it is, even the 24-hour fitness and the LA Fitness and Lifetime Fitness, like everywhere has usable barbell equipment.
Yeah.
It might not be to your standards, but come on, guys. You can get to a gym. And even if you can't get to the gym, every hotel has at least up to 45-pound dumbbells. And you can do a pretty dang good workout with that.
And I was actually looking online about this last night because I was like, I wonder, just like on my wind down time of the night, I was just like thinking of the gym we were just at and listening to the waves and the whales. And I was like, man, what if a cool job would be to travel and find the best hotel gyms or best travel gyms. And of course, 5 other people have already done that. I'm trying to look up the name of the website, but it's something like Travel Gym or something wonderful. And whoever created it just has a list of great gyms in cities or whatever when you're on the road. So it's like, it's totally doable to find great gyms nearby.
We'll have to put the link in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll have to find it again. But yeah, it seems like a really fun thing to do. I also think that we've done it in multiple countries now, you really get to see what that gym culture is like, which I find super entertaining.
That is interesting.
It's so interesting. The Tuesday crowd or whatever day it was in Fort Lauderdale or Boca Raton is where we were in Florida was hilarious. Oh my gosh. Dudes in sunglasses with bright neon gloves on. The dumbbell rack was just such a cluster. It was a mess because everybody would just drops their stuff and walks away and there's sweats all over the place. And it was packed. It was at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday with really interesting looking people.
A lot of silicone.
Yes.
On plastic.
Yes. And then we've gone in Puerto Vallarta. We've gone in so many different places. Yeah. So I think it's it's fun to go eat at the restaurants. I think it's fun to go see what the gyms are like.
Definitely universal that people gyms are everywhere. I think that's another thing CrossFit's done, not just in the domestic US, but internationally. There's sort of a CrossFit vibe pretty much everywhere. Anyways, what other hows do you have to making training while on the road less friction?
So yeah, map it out ahead of time, bring your workout clothes, decide which shoes you want to bring. You don't have to bring your lifting shoes. We each have a pair of Nobles that work really well for, squatting, whatever. If you want to do just regular cardio, like walking on the treadmill or whatever on the bike, they're pretty easy to pack, great to travel in. Straps, liquid chalk, have those available. You don't have to bring your belt. You can still work hard without your belt. Yep. Knee sleeves. For me, if I'm going to squat, I probably do want to have my knee sleeves, but they pack really easily. I have found that what we're used to in barbell training or normal training is having, anywhere from 45 to sometimes 2 hours to train. And anything less than that, like what you were saying before, doesn't seem like it matters. But we're also, during that regular training session, we have a plan and we always achieve a certain amount of volume or intensity where we had to really fight for something and really focus on something. So if you plan your workout ahead of time, that's super helpful. I've had times when I didn't actually have a set workout. I was just going to go in and wing it. And I found that I was all over the place with ideas and never kind of committed to a workout structure enough to get to that, third set challenge or that high intensity challenge that I really needed. And it was just kind of ADD too all over the place. So having a set workout already, even if you just want to ask your coach or just write it down for yourself, is really helpful. I think you can achieve that same feeling that we get endorphins from when we achieve the volume or the intensity. Doing AMRAPs, doing burnout sets, increasing weight till you can't do any more reps, like on a tricep pushdown or on bicep curls, supersetting lunges and goblet squats, Bulgarian split squats, stuff that's hard. And then supersetting it with another exercise with a similar muscle group just to, fatigue and feel a pump. Like you get to really go to a more subjective focus or a subjective driven program on those days. And I think that you have to do that. Like you have to figure out how to make it challenging because you're not going to go in and have like a certain weight on the bar. You get to just kind of pick your weight and pick your challenge for that day, but it's worth it to get there. Because I think if you don't get into that zone, it doesn't feel worth it. And you don't get what we were talking about earlier, that good kind of endorphin flush.
I think letting go of the weight, whatever the number of pounds or kilos or whatever, is very important because one, you have no idea what things actually weigh if you're at a strange gym.
Yeah, some 45 pounds are not 45 pounds.
And if you go to 24-hour fitness, they might say they're 45 pounds, but they're, who knows, 30 pounds.
Yeah.
Go set your PRs at 24-hour fitness Costa Mesa.
With the Eleiko plates and barbells, they are magic.
But I definitely let go of what the weight is on the bar. I try to keep track of it if I'm using barbells just to have some kind of semblance of an idea, but I don't actually care what the number is. I'm much more interested in getting relatively close to failure in something that takes me between 4 and 12 reps. 4 because I want to make sure that it's not so heavy that I'm, struggling to maintain good technique, and I want to be able to fully exhaust all of my muscles, which I think is harder to do in less than 4 reps, especially if you're doing accessory movements or single joint movements. If you're doing like a 1 to 3 RM on dumbbell curls,
yeah, no.
Or something like that, or cable curls, it doesn't work super well. But I'll just keep adding weight, almost like warm-up sets. If I put a weight on and if I can do more than 12 reps, I just stop and I'll go to more weight. That's basically my warm-up until I'm hitting failure in probably less than 10 reps. And I'll do a set or 2 of that, call it a day. And that's kind of my mindset there. I don't really try or care as much about doing sets across when I'm traveling. I'm more just like, get up to failure for a set or 2 within that kind of rep range. And that usually feels pretty dang good and kind of gets me through the kind of travel, yuck feeling.
Yeah. And you have a little more wiggle room with your schedule there. Yeah. Because you're not trying to find what feels like the prescribed weight of the day. You just kind of keep going up in weight. You're like, okay, we're good.
Exactly. Yeah. So more like ascending sets. I do like supersetting.
Yeah.
I tend to actually prefer doing antagonist muscles rather than the same muscles. So like I'll do curls and push downs or something like that. So I'll do triceps and biceps. No particular reason other than it just kind of like feels like I get the whole arm faster. And, just reduces the number of exercises. I don't think that's optimal for hypertrophy. Again, none of this is optimal for hypertrophy, but this is more just like, how can you get through a workout in 20, 30 minutes? If you're supersetting, you can get through 3, 4, 5 exercises, assuming you can get the equipment lined up. That tends to be one of the challenges.
If not, I recommend a drop set. Drop sets are so good. You might do 1 or 2 warm-up sets with something, let's say like a lat pull down, and your goal is to hit somewhere between 35 to 40 reps. Start heavy, something you can get like 6 to 8, 10 reps.
Yeah.
And you go till just about failure, and then you quickly reduce the weight. Do another set. That second set is freaking hard.
Yeah.
And then you drop the weight again after you've almost gotten to failure. That third set is really hard. And then you keep dropping until you want to die. And you just get so much done in that set of, 30 to 40 reps. And, by the end, you're just like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with this one.
That would be really good for getting the pump, I think. I think I'm too lazy to do anything more than 12. I'm kind of like, That's my whole rationale. Is like, if I can get to failure in less than 12 reps, I'd way rather do that than 30 reps or,
But you just do one set. So instead of doing, 3-4 sets of something, you do one big set without the rest.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, the other thing I use is there's two different approaches that I have, depending on the frequency of my training. If I'm going to be getting less than 4 workouts a week, if it's like 2 or 3, then I'm going to prioritize a full body session. And my framework for full body session is something that bends the knees, something that bends the hips, something that bends the elbows, and something that bends the shoulders.
Nice.
And so I'll just kind of cobble together 4 or 5 exercises that do those things.
I like that. Simple, hard, effective.
Yeah. If I'm going to train more than, if I know I'm going to get 3 or 4, and I'm pretty confident about that, then I'll keep an upper lower split. And I'll just do one that does everything from the waist up and one that does everything from the waist down. And that's kind of how I go through things. I think the full body workouts feel better for like vacation mode.
Yeah, totally.
Because you get the full body pump, but they're sometimes a little bit more time intensive or, logistics intensive. So there's trade-offs there.
Yeah.
But that's really the key for me.
Awesome. Well, next time you're traveling, you don't have to do any of this, but we suggest you do. I hope this helps so you can, feel good while you're traveling, and that seems to be worth it. And then when you get back to your normal training, you'll never know if you would have felt this much worse or this much better, but you maintain your conditioning. And I always believe it feels better to have done something rather than nothing as you get back into training.
The snapback will be much faster too. We didn't go into the whole like body composition feel and just like spooling back up into your training on the other side, but that is way smoother, in my opinion, as well. But
yeah, for sure. Love it. Well, thank you, Andrew. Thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you here next week on Barbell Logic.
Bye-bye.